What would you do for a seat at Oprah's table? I thought I knew the answer. I was wrong, dead wrong, because what she offered me wasn't fame, wasn't fortune. It was something that feeds on your soul. And the worst part? Most people say yes. I'm about to tell you something that will change how you see every celebrity interview, every award show, every inspiring moment you've ever watched on TV. This isn't clickbait. This isn't fiction. This is what really happens when you get invited behind the curtain of fame. And after you hear this story, you'll never look at that famous smile the same way again. Desperate, hollow, and half convinced I'm losing my mind, I sit in this rotting little apartment while the walls whisper things I shouldn't understand. I'm 40, broke, and invisible to the world. My car hasn't started in weeks. Rent is overdue. Every job offer turned out to be a ghost. Emails that disappeared like they were never real. And at night, something watches me from the corner. I try not to look, but when I do, it smiles. That was me, a producer with 0 credits, surviving on funeral, highlight reels, and nonprofit content that paid in exposure. You know that magical currency that doesn't pay rent? Most nights, I'd stare at my broken ceiling fan, wondering if this was my life now. A metaphor for everything I'd become broken, spinning nowhere, eventually stopping altogether. Then I got the email. Subject line, "Dinner invitation Ms. Winfrey requests you personally." I almost deleted it. My thumb literally hovered over the spam button, but something made me look closer. The sender? Verified. The email? Legitimate. The message? Impossible. Ms. Winfrey viewed your foster care documentary. She was moved. She would like to invite you to a private dinner at her Montecito estate. No cameras, no team, just you and her. I read it 10 times, checked the headers, Googled the sender. This was real. But here's the thing about dreams coming true. Sometimes they're not dreams at all. Sometimes they're invitations to something much darker. The car arrived the next day. Black SUV, tinted windows, silent driver in a suit that probably cost more than my rent. No small talk, no questions, just a nod, and we were moving. As we drove north on the 101, I felt something I hadn't felt in years' hope. This was it. The moment every struggling creative dreams about. She saw my work. She believed in me. I had no idea I was being driven to an audition where the only question was, what are you willing to consume to get everything you've ever wanted? When we passed through those gates, everything changed. Not just the scenery, the air itself. It felt heavier, like walking into a cathedral that had forgotten how to echo. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring, not because of sound, but because there isn't any. The driveway curved through trees that didn't sway, flowers that never wilted, grass cut so perfectly it looked fake, but wasn't. It was just controlled. The house appeared soft beige walls, flowering vines, windows that reflected nothing. It didn't feel expensive. It felt eternal, like it existed outside of time. Before I could knock, the door opened. A girl stood there, maybe 16, dressed in gray. Not a maid, not a butler, something I couldn't label. She didn't smile, didn't speak, just stepped aside like I'd already been expected. Not welcomed, processed. Inside was quieter than a tomb. No music, no voices, no electronic hums. Just amber light spilling across cream walls and the smell of old books mixed with something antiseptic. She led me down a hallway lined with photographs, black and whites of people who seemed familiar but whose names I couldn't place. Something about their eyes made me feel like I was interrupting a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. The deeper we went, the more I noticed the air pressure changing, like the house was layered in seals, each hallway a deeper chamber of something ancient. We reached a sunroom, glass doors, lush garden, but everything inside frozen in golden light. A single chair, a small table, lemon water sweating beside an empty glass. She motioned for me to sit, then vanished without a word. I sat there, heart pounding, running through what I'd say. Should I lead with humility or enthusiasm? Thank her first, or wait for her to speak? That's when I noticed something strange. No clocks, no phones, no screens, no indication of time at all. Even the sun seemed frozen across the floor. The whole house was holding its breath, waiting for something I hadn't figured out yet. The candlelight flickered across Oprah's face as she spoke. But what disturbed me most wasn't her words, it was how the shadows behind her seemed to move independently, stretching and contracting like living things. The white glove rested on her shoulder with an intimacy that made my skin crawl. Not because it was there, but because she didn't seem to notice it. It was perfectly pristine, not a single wrinkle or stain, as if it had never touched anything earthly. When she gestured while speaking, the glove would occasionally shift, its fingers flexing with a subtle intelligence that suggested it wasn't merely resting, it was holding her. The pressure of its grip was almost visible in the way her posture remained unnaturally straight, as if she were a marionette whose strings had been replaced by something far more invasive. What made the moment truly horrifying was the realization that this wasn't possession in any traditional sense, this was partnership. Oprah's eyes would occasionally dart to the empty space just above the glove, and she would pause mid-sentence, as if listening to whispered instructions only she could hear. Her smile would deepen during these moments, taking on a quality that seemed to bypass her conscious mind entirely. The entity behind her, whatever cast that impossible shadow, had learned to speak through her voice, to wear her expressions like a mask. But the glove remained its anchor, its one visible claim on the physical world. When she said, "They always choose me," the glove tightened imperceptibly on her shoulder, and I understood that the choice had been made long ago. And what sat across from me now was simply the beautiful aftermath of a soul that had learned to hunger for the wrong things. The plate materialized between us without ceremony, and I watched as Oprah's pupils dilated with what I can only describe as religious ecstasy. She wasn't looking at me anymore, she was looking through me, as if calculating my spiritual weight, measuring the exact dimensions of my desperation. The glove began to move then, not floating but reaching, connected to something that existed in the peripheral darkness of the room. Its fingers were too long, too elegant, and as it guided the fork toward me, I realized this wasn't just about making a deal with a demon, this was about joining a communion that had been feeding on human ambition for centuries. The white glove wasn't just a hand, it was a sacrament, perfectly preserved and endlessly patient, waiting to mark its next initiate with the kind of touch that leaves no visible scars but changes everything about how the world sees you. The most chilling aspect wasn't the supernatural presence itself, but how normal it had all become to her. Oprah spoke of her spirit guide with the casual affection of someone discussing a beloved pet, completely unaware that what she called appetite was slowly digesting her from the inside out. The glove had been there so long it had become invisible to her, just another part of her anatomy. She genuinely believed she was offering me grace, salvation from mediocrity, not understanding that she was no longer capable of distinguishing between nourishment and consumption. The entity that wore the white glove had learned to speak her language, to use her genuine desire to help others as a perfect hunting ground. And in that moment, I understood that the most terrifying predators aren't the ones that stalk from the shadows. They're the ones that learn to smile with borrowed warmth while their true nature feeds quietly in the spaces between heartbeats.